Call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Reba, roll call.
Mr. Bonomo? Here. Mr. Chapman?
Here.
Mr. Fume?
Here.
Mrs. Kay?
Here.
Mr. John?
Present.
Mr. Mahalik?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mrs. Scarcella?
Here.
And Mr. Zola?
Here.
Announcement of executive sessions held as follows. June 13th, litigation, personnel and tax appeals. June 28th, superintendent position. June 29th, stop-loss claims, renewal and property tax appeals. Dr. Butler informed me that there are no public announcements of recognition at this time. Mr. Mahalik, public comment directed to the board on agenda items only.
Tammy Rogers.
Hi, my name is Tammy Rogers. I am the education coordinator for the Domestic Violence Service Center, for which I've worked for 20 years. I thought it was very important for me to come and speak to the board tonight because a lot of times we hear about a lot of the bad things in the Hazleton area school district. However, when I was in the school district this past year, I was never treated with such respect, with such compassion. All the principals were absolutely wonderful. The teachers had so much control over their classrooms. That was the best school district that I've been in the entire 20 years that I've been doing this work. And I've been in every single one of them in Luzerne and Carbon County. So I just need to commend you on everything that you're doing with the schools, because the teachers are great and so are the principals and so are the kids. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, ma'am, thank you for driving down to share that with us. We certainly do not hear that enough, so we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule and kind of. Oh, okay. Oh, it says Wilkes-Barre. All right, stay for the whole meeting then. You don't have to leave. Teresa Geneseo.
Genelesco.
I'm sorry, Genelesco. I apologize.
Hi, I'm Teresa Genelesco. I'm one of the school nurses in the district. And I just would like to I want to talk about number 77. And I was wondering if you could just explain what exactly it is that you want to do with this recommendation.
With 77,
I'm sorry, it's the one where they're changing
yes, we have advertised twice now for CSN to replace Annie Dolan. And I think we did a pretty thorough job of putting that advertisement in strategic papers, etc. Unfortunately, we have not received a single CSN application. I spoke with Annie yesterday. She's recommending perhaps, in addition to what the board may be considering this evening, that perhaps an RN who's willing to come in and seek his or her CSN might be a possibility.
Would that be something you'd be willing to consider? The whole thing is the CSN position is so important. It really, really is. We tried it last year, and I don't know if you're aware of the fact, but it just did not work. At the high school there was only one CSN. They pulled someone over until I went down in January, and it just does not work. The nurse that's pulled from a building is constantly called back to her building. The state mandate is 1 per 1,500. We have 2,000 just at the high school alone. you know, the CSN has to run the building. The nurse, the RN health assistants are wonderful. They can cover for us, they can help us screen, they're wonderful, but two of those positions are shared. One is with the nursing assistant position, the other one is with the early intervention. So we really only have one to work with. That person is used a lot of times for substituting when we have call-ins, because we don't have any subs. So all I am asking is that you really, really, really try not to get rid of the CSN position. Even if you can hire someone that's going for their CSN. I know we have two now that are interested in doing that. I don't know what else, I really don't know what else to say. I just want to thank you for your time, and I just want to let you know how important this position really is to us. And to the students, especially the students, because it's their safety that we're concerned with, their health and well-being.
Are you saying that we should try to continue advertising for the
Please, if you could.
CSN then, instead of
Yes.
putting a nursing assistant in?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Zoll, in that regard, Ms. Dolan she claims she might have a couple of names that she'd refer to us that we could actually reach out and contact.
Okay.
Excuse me, Ms. Kay.
Oh, that's okay. So last year when this came up, we did speak with Beth Ann Bond, who was in charge of it. I did call down to her office, and she retired, so there was a Julie, let me see, it's on her email to me. I don't know how to say her last name, but anyway, she said the RN cannot make plans for care, and they cannot carry the caseload, so we need to be in compliance with the 1 to 1,500 for the CSN. Also, she sent me information on the caseload that our nurses have from the SHAR system. So we have 1,675 children within our district that have life-threatening issues that need to be seen by a nurse on a daily basis, such as arthritis, asthma, cardiovascular conditions, etc. I have all the documents here.
That is correct.
The nurses also see, for vision screenings alone, 11,167 children. So she felt that what would happen was we would lose some of our funding, but more so that we should not be putting the kids' lives in danger. She also did send me some school codes that she cited as to why we needed to keep the CSN.
Well, one of the things I did not realize either is the chairperson of the department is supposed to have half a day, every day, for just those duties. And
Yeah, I have that from Beth Ann Bond from last year. They need a half a day to do the paperwork if they're the department chair, so they can't be counted into the head count of the CSNs.
And I know last year Mrs. Dolan was by herself for the first half of the year with help, but pretty much by herself, and it really was.
And at that point, Teresa, we did change that. I'm right here, in the front.
Oh, I'm
We did
sorry.
change that. And I really believe if there was a CSN that had applied, I think we'd be sitting here tonight voting to hire that person.
I do believe that. I do.
But to this point, nobody has applied.
I know.
So that's why we're stuck at this point, not because we don't want to do it.
Now, they said there were some in Berwick and some in Bloomsburg, if we can try to get some names from them and see, because I know they did hire. And Crestwood, I think, did as well.
And I did share with Annie if we've spoken now twice, and she's been a terrific help. I really
Yes.
appreciate. If we have names that we can pursue, I'd
Okay.
be on the phone tonight.
Does everybody up here feel like we should take this off the
I think
agenda
we should remove that.
for tonight or not?
Yes.
Ma'am, if I may ask, Ms. Kay mentioned funding. Is it funding tied to that position?
Yes.
Okay, and how is that tied?
I'm not exactly sure how that is tied. I could look into that, but I
Sure.
do know that depending on what we have, the state provides so much funding for the
Okay.
schools.
Well, I'll have, Mr. Reba, if you could look into how that affects our funding, having a certified school nurse, because if there's more funding that goes towards that position, obviously, but again, I mean, it's not money that's keeping us from getting it, it's lack of, but can you please call the Department
We
of Health
submit
tomorrow?
the SHARS report based on all of our nurses, dental services, all that.
Right, but the
type of
SHARS
thing.
report doesn't,
No, so
have anything to do
we
with
get
funding.
approximately, I don't have the exact number right here, about 200,000 a year reimbursement through filing the SHARS report.
so can you see if
how much that would affect it if you
Right.
pulled one CSN
Exactly.
out of it, yes.
Right, thank you.
If we cannot get anyone, but there is someone that is willing to go for their CSN, would that be a consideration? I mean, something to think about.
That would probably have to be checked out by our solicitor if we're allowed to do that or not, because I really don't have an answer to that.
Okay. All right, thank you so much for your time, really.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of wish the information would have been provided at our executive sessions where we discussed this topic, because we were going off of what Ann Dolan was giving to the superintendent, and that's why it's here today, figuring that we were doing the right thing by trying to fill the
Trying to-
position so there's a
Exactly.
body
No,
there.
I do
you know.
understand that.
But I
Maybe if
wish
you wanna
some of
give us
this
the help,
information would have been
we'll
known.
take that too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Let me
seriously.
just quickly say, when we looked at this last year, and we talked about the ratios that you referenced, or that was referenced, if we were to share a ratio with, for example, the high school with Maple Manor and Early Township, we could arrange the ratios such that it would meet the state. And I did confirm that with Ann. Now, is that advisable? No.
No. On paper, it looks great, but in reality,
Yeah,
it just-
realistically, we know that's, they have full responsibilities in those two buildings, but on paper, and we discovered that last year too, on paper, we would meet the quota. But no, we don't think that's wise.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Robert Childs?
77. Right after this, we'll go to table.
Hello, I'm Bob Childs from Hazel Township. I'm here to speak on, first off, on item number 34, the budget you're about to pass this evening. When I've been on the board in the past, and also since I've been off the board, every year when the budget comes up, we spend our time apologizing to the seniors for the fact that we're raising taxes. I'd like to reverse that a little bit this evening and apologize to the students for what we don't have. The school district, the Hazelton Area School District, is 483rd out of 499 reporting districts in terms of the money we spend per student. Okay, that's awful. You say to yourself, "Oh, well, we're being very economical and so forth." In fact, what that means is we don't have enough administrators to do the jobs that they're supposed to do. We don't have enough teachers, so our classrooms are overcrowded. It means that our students don't have the facilities that they necessarily need to get the jobs done, whether it be computers or whether it be pencil and paper, the textbooks that we need duplicates of for kids to be able to take home at nights. We don't have that, okay? So my apologies to the students who actually have no say in this whole situation. On the flip side of that, I would like to bring to the attention of this whole crowd this evening and any others who might listen in, that the adults do indeed have a say in this. You vote every couple of years to elect representatives to the legislature, and those representatives are the ones that are keeping Pennsylvania in the dark when it comes to school funding. We're the only state in the country that still uses property taxes as the sole way of funding education, and it doesn't work anymore. And it's hurting the living daylights out of our seniors. The legislators are the ones who need to be apologizing, not you folks. By using a combination of sales taxes and income taxes, this whole problem could be alleviated quite well. And so I am imploring the people who do vote in this area to begin to make number one priority that you look at the people who are running for the legislature and you say to them, look, if you're not voting to change the way that the school systems are run, the taxing, the funding of the school districts, I'm not voting for you. I saw recently Senator Argyle apparently is continuing to stand up for this change. I don't live in his district, but I sure as the dickens would vote for him if I did, on the basis of that only. But it's time that becomes the priority item. And the senior citizens need to take that to heart. They can't continue to blame the school board and the school district. They gotta take it on the nose a little bit themselves, and they gotta sit down and look at whom they're voting for. I have a couple of seconds just to mention, I'm very sorry to see Pat Tomshaw's resignation. She's an individual who in the past has done wonders for the students in this district. She's a person who puts her heart into it. And I'm very sorry to see Dr. Butler resigning. It says here by mutual agreement they'll decide on a time. I was figuring maybe 3 years or something like that from the board's point of view would be a good point in time to aim for. Just a thought.
We'll check his contract. to see
I was
what
supposed to
it
say
says.
that. Look really closely. Look for the fine print. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Doc, I have to agree with you for a change, okay? You are absolutely correct on the way the taxes are done. However, if you read Senator Argle's recommendation, was the wage tax was going to 3%, something up to almost 5. Sales tax is going from 6 to 7. They're going to tax food, medicines that are not prescriptions, and I believe clothing. At one time, they were going to also tax your services, lawyers' fees, etc., and so on. Yet, in his proposal, school districts who had what's that word called, Tony? Bills outstanding. Bonds.
Debt service.
We have $122 million in debt. School districts like us would still be able to levy property taxes. So I don't know where it's going to come from. And you're right in a sense. Right now, we talked this morning, I think it was 1,100, how many people? 1,100 and what?
1166, I believe.
1,166 people in our district that don't pay school taxes now. But if Senator Argle's program goes through, they're still probably not going to pay sales tax or pay property tax, but they're going to be paying taxes on food, clothing, non-prescription drugs, etc. So it's going to cost them a little bit more. But you are absolutely correct, and I wholeheartedly support what you just said. It's time for change. The one thing Pennsylvania legislators are very good at doing is passing the buck to the local municipalities. And that's what happens right here with the 9 of us and whoever follows us. We get the blame for everything. And it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's a shame. But you're absolutely correct. And I do agree with you on this.
Any other public comment, Mr. Mahalik?
Nope, that was,
Because it was discussed about removing 77, we just need a motion and a second to
I'll make
remove
a
item
second.
77.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any questions on that?
Removing it.
Would it be remove or table?
We would be removing it for
Yeah,
tonight.
removing it for tonight. Okay.
All in favor of removing 77, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Just need a motion and a second on the Treasury's report for May of 2017.
Motion. Second.
Any questions? All in favor of approving the treasurer's report, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Dr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Curriculum and instruction approving items 1 through 11.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 1 through 11, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Special ed, ESL, and alternative ed, approve items 12 through 18. with
So
one
moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 12 through 18, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Nutrition, number 19, recommend board approve the updated revised wellness policy number 246. Sent to PD
Motion.
for approval.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Number 19, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Transportation, approve items 20 through 21.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 20 and 21, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Technology, approve items 22 through 27 with one motion.
Move. Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 22 through 27, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on all.
No on all.
No and all.
Ayes have it, noting the 3 no votes.
Student activities, athletics, and extracurricular, approve items 28 through 31
So
with
moved.
one.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 28 through 31, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No,
No,
no
on
on,
31.
No and 31.
No on 31.
no on 30 and 31.
So we have Mr. Bonomo, no on 31, Mrs. K, no on 31, Mr. John, no on 31, and Mrs. Scarcella, no on 30 and 31.
Mr. President, could I ask a question on that at this point?
Sure.
Mr. Barletta, is this the same motion that, 5 months ago passed 9-0? Item number 31. Was that not a motion that was passed 5 months ago and passed 9-0?
If I can, I'm one of those that did change his vote because I was made aware of, at the last committee meetings the other night, that no coaches would be excused from school at any time to participate in these type of activities. So some of the coaches that were participating, junior high football coach, practices are at like 5:30, games on Saturday. Assistant high school football coach, practice starts at 3:15. In addition, girls basketball coaches, games are in the evening, which we probably want our coaches there, our administrators there anyway, so that's, as well as practices are after the school day. So there's really was no one affecting this. No one was being affected by this. And I think we're in a territory, and I should have known better 5 months ago, Mr. Bonomo. I think you're right. I mean, so these administrators could go and do other things with their life that is not related to school, not related to kids, not related to self-esteem development or anything like that, or they could do this. And by the way, I was a volunteer coach last year, and I know people can say whatever they want about this. These people, they're not doing it for the money. They are not doing it for the money. You can't. It's pennies on the hour. So it was shame on us for voting 9-0 for this 5 months ago, when these people are out there doing more for their students and for their schools. Shame on us, and I apologize.
I'd like to just say, though, Bob, that I think 5 months ago, the way it was proposed, it looked like, at least to me, it looked like coaches that were principals and that were leaving school early to attend meets and practice and so forth. And now what I find out is most of the coaches aren't affected by it at all. So it really, we painted everything with one big broad stroke of the brush when we probably should have looked at it and took it apart and made those decisions. And I think that's what we did now. So I think we corrected a wrong, and I feel good about it.
So, Mr. Barletta, there's no administrators that leave during the day for sporting events?
How about a JV game up at Delaware Valley? Football. About varsity? What time would the varsity bus leave normally to go to Delaware Valley? Okay, 2 o'clock. School's over at what time?
High school is roughly 2:40, Mr. John.
Oh, I know that. I just don't want to say it. The reason I ask that question, because I believe some of the administrators are in the middle school, elementary, middle. They even get out later. And
Nobody that's a varsity coach.
nobody? That's changed?
Yes, not at least for the past 3 years.
So if you're leaving, say at 2 o'clock, I don't care where you're going, and administrators can't leave until 2:40, who's on that bus that's employed by the school district besides a voluntary coach?
I mean, none of our head, excuse me, Ms. Berliff, none of our head coaches are administrators, are they? I mean, I'm thinking of football, I'm thinking of basketball, I'm thinking,
We have employees of the district, head coaches, and they are excused and travel with me.
It used to be,
Not for administrators.
but it used to be, Mr. Barletta, years ago, that any head coach was free, the prep period was the last period of the day. Is that still true? And that was done purposely so that there wouldn't be any interruption in the educational cycle.
And that, when I was a head coach, that's exactly what we did.
Correct, that's why we did it. It's still being done.
To the best of my knowledge, it is.
Okay.
Again, that's not a call by my department, that's scheduling the administrators, the principals when they make the schedule. To my knowledge, it is, because I'm just thinking off the top of my head, we just had a situation with softball, they played a lot of games getting
Yeah.
early.
Yes, they did.
That coach has the last period as a plan period.
Okay, just so they're still doing that, that's all.
There's just
To my knowledge, we do not have any administrators who are varsity head coaches. Of the 23 varsity sports, there are no administrators who are the head coaches.
We discussed this at the committee meetings. We discussed all of this, and I think what was said was that when people were applying for the position, if it was going to be a conflict, I think you were instructed that their names would not be put forward for the positions if there was a conflict in the scheduling. I mean, we discussed that, so, yeah,
Yeah, that was the understanding.
yeah.
and clearly you have already made that known to our administrators that are coaches, that they're not to leave the building as such last year in Williamsport, and they did not. So I will go back to shame on us for not having this discussion 5 months ago and to pass a policy without knowing anything about it. We should do better next time.
And we also talked about instituting punching in and punching out so that we were confident that it wouldn't be happening, that no one would be going behind or trying to take advantage of a situation. So I think we tried to cover all the bases to make sure that education first, and then those that wanted to volunteer their time or those that are being paid to do it, very minimal amount when you figure out the hours, still would be filling their obligations as instructional leaders first, right?
I do want to make note on 30 that I cannot support that because we eliminated 7th grade sports. So therefore, I'm saying no to 30.
Anything else? Dr. Butler?
Facilities and capital projects, approve items 32 and 33.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 32 and 33, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Finance, number 34, recommend board approve the general fund final budget, option number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
No on 34 and 35.
We're not
I
voting
have
yet,
a
we're
vote.
just
I have a-
comments though.
Excuse me. Mr. Reeve, would you care to explain to the public what that option is?
Yes.
So they're all aware of it?
So option 3 is a budget that has total expenses at $147,234,658, revenues at $144,866,228, deficit of $2,000,400,000 $368,430, so about just under $2.4 million deficit. Tax rates in that option are Luzerne County going from 9.542 to 9.901. Schuylkill County staying the same, 34.770, remaining at 34.770. And Carbon County going from 26.509 mils up to 27.451 mils.
What does that equate, Mr. Reba, on a $100,000 home?
At your place tonight, I have a sheet called Budget Update on the,
Tony, can we put it up on the screen for the audience?
Tony, can you get that page 4 up? We did a table for you that shows examples in each of the 3 counties, starting at a $50,000 market value property and going up to a $250,000 property. But to answer your question, on a $100,000 property, Schuylkill, because it's not going up, would be 0 increase. Luzerne would be $35.90 per year increase. And Carbon would be $47.10 per year
How much?
increase. $47.10.
Mrs. K just pointed something out. In Carbon County, Hazleton area, it's the same millage for last year and next year.
I'm sorry, that's a typo. The millage rate in Carbon again is 27.451.
Yeah, on that, was a yeah, right. There was a sheet here somewhere. that
Again, looking
spelled
at
out.
that tax sheet,
See this sheet here?
we're lowest in Carbon County by far at the
On this
27
page
mills.
1.
Schuylkill County, amongst the Schuylkill County districts, we're number 3 from the bottom, and in Luzerne County, we're 2nd from the bottom. The ones that say NA or are in red, we weren't able to get those millage rates
Yeah, I see
from
what
those
you're saying right
districts.
Mhm.
So in July, when the districts all publish their
27.5.
new millage rates, we
Yeah.
will update this sheet.
And Mr. Reba, could you also add that even with this tax increase, how much money are we still going to have to take out of the general fund?
About just under 2.4 million.
And if we hadn't raised taxes at all, how much will we be taking out of there?
With this option, we're picking up about $2.35 million in additional property tax revenue.
Which translates into how much being taken out of the other
And it
fund?
would be close up near about 4.7 million would be coming out of fund balance.
Which would leave us with how much?
We'd be down right now at the end of the year. Again, we won't know for sure until we file our AFR in October. But if all goes according to budget, we're going into this year at about 6 million. So it would put it down around 1.2, 1.3.
And every time we take money out of that fund, what does that do to our credit?
We actually just had a credit rating from Moody's, our yearly credit rating. And because of the declining fund balance, we actually got reduced in our credit rating by 2 points.
Which means if we borrow, it costs us more, correct?
The credit rating is a direct implicator on what our interest rate is when we borrow money, yes.
How much, Mr. Reba, with this recommendation, are we left with in our fund balance?
With this recommendation, again, budget to budget, about 3.6 million.
So if we have a year like we did this year, and a year like we did last year, but let's just go on this year, we're basically bankrupt next year at the end of the school year.
Depending, we have 1.5 to 2 years left if we continue.
1.5 to 2 years.
Bobby, could you put up the fund balance graph, please? Sorry, Bob.
Oh, we got 35 what? Which one's that?
So this is the fund balance, if I'm not mistaken, Tony, starting from what, 2005?
2005. Yes.
$200,000.
Yes, we went down to 2007, 2008,
figure.
started climbing again to a high point in 2012, and it's been declining since 2012 to present.
So by not, over all these years,
19,901.
increasing at least a little bit in taxes all the time, and just taking it out of our fund balance, this is where we're at.
Yes.
In addition, you've had the Peaser spike
Peaser,
really hit right there as well in healthcare.
The
Right.
Peaser spike primarily is a direct correlation to that downwards trend in the fund balance.
But when Peasers, when that hit us, that's when you had to adjust the taxes as well, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, if you don't, this is what happens.
And we had a reserve set aside for Peasers, a little bit of it, preparing for that
Right.
day.
What's the
So, so you were doing your homework preparing for it, but it's still,
Overwhelmed us.
9,901.
where are we at? Ready to move on?
I'd just like to comment, first of all, thanking administration for all their hard work on this. Fellow school board members, Mr. Chapman, commend you and the rest of the board who were able to make the budget meetings, for spending countless hours on this budget. You know, this is my fourth time doing this, approving a budget. And this is probably the most difficult one that I've had to sit through, just because I know that the fund balance is dwindling. Our options are extremely limited when it comes to revenue sources. The state has not been our friend whatsoever on legislation or action that will help public education. They've recently enacted pension reform. I'd like to say that it's a little too late, and it really doesn't affect us this year. It's not going to affect us next year. It's probably not going to affect us the year after. It's just a little too late. If they would have, helped us in 2012, maybe it would have helped us in the long run, and it would have helped us now. Didn't help us, though. Property tax reform, as Dr. Childs, Mr. John touched on, something that has to happen, needs to happen now. It's been kicked around the legislature for, it feels like a decade, if not longer. And nothing seems to be coming out of that. It seems like it's gaining traction, and it always seems like it's gaining traction, but it never happens. So to the public, put pressure on your on your legislators to have action on that. I am voting for option 3. This is something that I said I would never do on this board, is to raise taxes. We're put in such a position, though, that I don't have any other, we have no other options. Like, we're not, from the revenue perspective, we don't have, like, we're not selling Girl Scout cookies to raise money. Like, we're not selling a service. Our service is public education. We have no options for revenue besides raising taxes on the local level. On the state level, it's whatever we get from the state and the federal government, whatever we get from the federal government. So our options are very, very limited. I feel like we've done a tremendous job in trying to stave off cuts that affect our students. I think we've done a tremendous job in doing that this year. There were some cuts that affected our students, but I think overall we've done a tremendous job in keeping those programs intact. Like I said, though, this was a very difficult thing to do. I warn future boards that there is not going to be money left in several years. Maybe in the next year or two. If we have a bad healthcare year next year, you may not have any money left by next year. And that's not an option. I know people kind of throw that around to say, well, just go bankrupt or just go broke. It's not a good option to be in. Borrowing money to stay open and keep your doors open is not is not a good option. In business, in public education, it's not a good idea. Scranton School District is a perfect example of the failure that they have. Basically, the state is taking over that district as we speak. It's a terrible position to be in. We don't want to be in that position. We really don't. I just read that PSBA sent out a survey on how many school districts are raising taxes, going up to the index. There's 75% of the school districts that are doing that, according to the survey. Like, we're not the only ones that are in this position. We're not going to be the only district that's facing economic woes. In the future, this is going to continue, unfortunately, unless Harrisburg steps up to the plate. I would not hold my breath on that, though. So that's all I have to say on 34.
The easy way out is just to vote no. I mean, the easy way out is just to vote no and not help with a solution, not to drain out what was left in the fund balance. And you can't always take the easy way out.
Anything else on 34? Mr. Reba.
Mr. Bonomo?
I'm gonna take the easy way out and vote no.
Mr. Chapman?
I'm gonna do the right thing and vote yes.
Mr. Fume?
Yes.
Mrs. K?
No.
Mr. John?
I'm gonna do the right thing in my own mind. No.
Mr. Mahalik?
As a board member that attended as many of the budget meetings as possible, and was participating and giving suggestions and ideas to administration, there is no other option than number 3. So yes.
Mrs. Scarcella?
I am going to do the right thing in my mind and keep the senior citizens in my mind. So I am voting no.
Mr. Zola?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-4.
Mr. President, is there a possibility we could get the members that vote no to give us their recommendations, what we could do? I'd be willing to change my vote if I can get recommendations on how we could continue operating as we see fit, and yet not take any more from the general budget. I'd like, if we could maybe suspend this meeting, allow the 4 people to vote no to give us their
I'd love to hear
their
it
ideas.
myself. So.
I'd like to hear it.
Me too.
15 years ago, I made the suggestion to the board that we raise taxes a little bit every year. And as this board is doing, they laughed at me now. So that's my only suggestion for it. I think it was the prudent thing to do. You raise taxes a little bit every year. It's $20 here.
But
it's
Tony-
$20
So,
there.
so define a little, Mr. Bonomo.
Well, wait,
What's
I
a
want to
little?
say one thing
Okay.
first, please.
Yeah.
We've been raising them a little the 3 years previous to this that I've been on the board. And look where we're at now. If we were to do the same thing this year and raise them just a little, and maybe realize maybe $500,000 to $1 million, well, what position are we going to be in next year? I won't be here, but what position are you going to be in next year? Eventually, the fund balance is going to run out if we do stuff like that.
But the question is, what's a little?
Yeah, what is a little? Yeah, that's a good question. What is a little? In a district this size, what is a little?
Right.
No other suggestions?
My reason for voting again is I'm not going to put it on our senior citizens. And I don't believe I was one to not vote to reinstate kindergarten because I don't think we had all the data to say that it did not work. So I would have liked to at least seen for one more year to see what it was like. And as I recall, Mr. Mahalik, you said you didn't care if we went bankrupt. You just wanted to bring kindergarten back. That's what I recall
What
you
data
saying.
are you looking for, Mrs.?
Just to see if it
Kershaw.
actually did work.
But no, what data? You use the word, I'm looking for data. What is data? Tell me what you're looking for in data.
Well, what did we just voted, we just voted to actually reinstate kindergarten with no data. What data did you have to vote saying that
I
we should
had
reinstate?
a whole bunch of teachers sitting right in front of here saying the kids 40% of her class was not
How many
ready
teachers?
for
How many
first grade.
teachers? Was it all?
12? There was
Well,
12
that's,
teachers here?
that is the reason that I am voting no for
Because
this.
12
You wanted
doesn't
a reason,
represent
that's
the
what I
district?
gave.
So
I'm not
what
going to
number-
rebut it.
What number of representation did you need to hear?
I think we could have all talked about
Mr.
it.
President, point
We
of
have
order,
meetings.
please.
We've had plenty of meetings to talk about it.
Bobby,
Can we have a point
just
of order,
second.
please?
Just a second. First of all, and I'm gonna take part of the blame for this. When we went last year and voted 9-0 to go to kindergarten half a day, that was our fault as an administration and as a board for not sending somebody out to the 250-some school districts in the state who have half-day kindergarten. Nobody went to see what kind of curriculum they had, what they did, what constituted a day. I have 2 grandchildren down in Boyertown, half-day kindergarten. My kids went to half-day kindergarten. They did all right. But we did not go out and prepare our teachers, and that's a shame on our part. The administration part and us as a board. The only problem is if we say anything, then we're micromanaging, and it's not our job as board members to do that. We do have some good ideas. We have 3 educators up here, and Mr. Zola was in the district. We do have some ideas how to help with education. We really and truly do. That was our fault, because we did not do that. And I feel sorry, and I apologize to all the teachers in kindergarten that we didn't insist that be done. I think it would have been different if we knew what curriculum they did, how they did it, and why they did it. And that's our fault. Yours, mine, everybody sitting up here.
But full-day kindergarten is not the only reason why we're in the bind.
Nope.
We are. So it's a much larger picture, much larger.
But it is a big chunk of it, Vinny.
It's-
Yes, it is.
It's a
Mr.
much
Zola.
larger picture than that.
I mean, half of it's funded by state money. There's
We
ready
still
to
needed
learn-
2.5
there's
million to
ready
bring it
learn.
back.
There's ready-to-learn funds that goes to half-day kindergarten, or to full-day kindergarten.
I
So,
talked to,
so again, I'm going by the fact that there's teachers sitting in front of me for several meetings telling us how these kids are not ready for first grade. Then the administration came and said, we need a transitional first grade, which makes absolutely no sense to
No
me
sense.
because, one, you either gonna have a whole lot of kids in first grade, or you're gonna have a whole lot of kids being retained in kindergarten. Somewhere it wasn't working. It was and you're right, Mr. John, terrible experiment. I'm going back to saying what other options are out there right now for the budget. That's all I'm saying, because maybe somebody knows more than what we heard, and I just want to hear it, because I will vote no if there's something else we could do on 34. But I hadn't heard anything else, and I did attend probably more budget meetings this year than I had in the past. But if these 4 board members, I mean, you're all intelligent, voted and elected by the taxpayers, if you have an option, give it to us so I can say, yes, I'm doing my part too, because nobody means more to me than senior citizens. I lived with my grandmother to the last breath in her life. I know what a struggle is for senior citizens. I know what I did later on in my life to allow her to have just a little tiny bit of comfort. So when you start using, I'm thinking about senior citizens, man, that hits really hard right here. But give me the other option. And that's why I'm asking to let them talk. I'll be quiet for the rest of the meeting and give us options.
my letter will be to Mr. Jackson in the paper.
Whatever.
I attended every budget meeting, every one. And there was probably only 2 or 3 people, I think, that did that. And we struggled every meeting to try and figure out how to reduce what had to come out of the final, out of our little nest egg that was left. And I just, there was no help from anyone. We met with legislators, we met with we met with everyone, and asked for help, and there was none. You know, it's like crickets in the room. So, you know, this is where it's at. I think it's a necessary thing. I don't apologize for it. I think it's the right thing, and I hope we can move on.
Anything else? 35,
Number 35, recommend board approve tax resolution option number 3 for the 2017-18 school year.
Second.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Reeve, will you explain the difference between 34 and 35?
35 is the actual resolution which levies the various taxes. And the tax rates in this resolution are the millage rates I covered on number 35.
Mr. Rubin?
Yeah, we have the motion in a second.
Mr. Bonomo,
No.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Mr. Fume,
Yes.
Mrs. K,
No.
Mr. John,
No.
Mr. Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Garcella,
No.
Mr. Zola,
Yes.
and Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-4.
Number 36, recommend board approved homestead
So moved.
resolution
Second.
option.
Questions or comments? Mr. Rubin?
36, this is the homestead resolution, actually increasing it from about $385 to $388. Mr. Bonomo,
Yes.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes.
Mr. Fume,
Yes.
Mrs. K,
Yes.
Mr. John,
Yes.
Mr. Mahalik,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarcella,
Yes.
Mr. Zola,
Yes.
and Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Motion passes. I know.
Approve items 37 through 42 with one motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 37 through 42, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on 43C.
We didn't even get
We're
the-
Only up to 42,
Oh,
aren't we?
sorry. Okay. Yes.
Ayes have it, motion passes.
So in that regard, approve bills, number 43.
So moved.
Mine died.
Need a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Number 43, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No on 43C.
No on 43C.
Ayes have it, motion passes.
Approve items 44 through 56 superintendent's agenda with one motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments?
Dr. Butler, can you tell me how much do we reduce the conference budget for this year?
I could tell you that. We
Thank you, Mr. Reba.
reduced it down to $50,000 for general fund funded conferences. There's other conference money in there, but it's all through funding sources.
From what, Tony? What?
It
50
was
from what?
134, 135, down to 50.
And Mr. Mahalik, I think if we continue to keep a close eye on that, my successor, I think that could be, first of all, that's reasonable, and perhaps it could be trimmed down a bit.
Dr. Butler, how many of those conferences are grants? You have any idea?
Percentage-wise, Mr. John, I'd venture to say maybe 50% or greater.
So that's not coming out of our general fund?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I'll vote for that then.
Yep.
Mr. Reba?
Numbers 44 through 56, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Approve items 57 through 71 with one motion.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Mr. Reba?
Numbers 57 through 71, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No on 67.
No on 67.
No on 67.
What is,
Ayes have it, noting the 3 no votes on number 67.
Approve items 72 through 79 with one motion, excluding 77.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I'd just like to take the time to, on item number 78, to wish Dr. Butler the best of luck in his new venture in another school district. Dr. Butler has been, to me at least, a very transparent, community-minded superintendent. He's always put the community and the kids first, and that's something that I always look for in a superintendent and in a academic leader. So Dr. Butler has certainly fulfilled that duty here at Hazleton, and I for one will definitely miss him leading the reins here. So Thank you, Dr. Butler.
I agree, Dr. Butler. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, Doc. Of course, I've already told you that, so good luck.
Thank you, Doc. Good luck.
Thank you. I say the same.
Thank you,
We'll
Doc.
miss you.
Dr. Butler, I have to say something. Excuse me. When you first came here, I thought you were a shining light, and I still think you are. I think I also consider you a friend. And for that reason, number 78, I'm voting no. Because I hate to lose you. As a
Geez, we
friend.
don't want you as a friend. Holy
Well,
moly.
that works a lot of ways, Vinny. That
The
works a
guy's
lot
going
of
to
ways.
the guy's going to a better land.
I must say, he has me
Holy
thinking
cow.
twice. That's
Just remember, I only have 4 more months left. I have a lot of room.
He's like the guy when you get shot with an arrow, you know, in the cowboy movies. Should I pull it out or not, you know?
Push it in.
And I think that's respectful of Mr. John, and it's symbolic in nature. I
Yes.
think we could all vote no. The fact is, it would still, you wouldn't be held here, but I think that's a very, a nice symbolic gesture by Mr. John.
Clarence, you know we had to give you a little shot on it, though, right?
I expect it. I expect it. Don't worry. It's coming back.
Well, I know you still have to vote, but I would like to say a few words, and I tend to get a little emotional in these situations. As much as this job has been very challenging, it's been extremely, extremely rewarding and personally fulfilling. And as I look out and the faces in the audience and think about the other 1,300 plus people who I've had the pleasure of working with, all the misnomers that I heard about the district coming here 4 years ago, Mr. John, quickly erased in just a short few months. I was embraced. I felt welcomed. The relationships that have been developed, I will never forget. This is by far one of the most pleasurable experiences of my career, even though the challenges have been immense. I do thank previous board members for giving me the opportunity as assistant superintendent, and I thank this board for the opportunity to serve the last 2 years as superintendent. I was sharing with my wife, this will undoubtedly be 2 years of enjoyable memories, and one that, quite frankly, is hard to walk away from. I do want to quickly mention the faculty, the staff, the administration, and the students. Even though we have 11,000 students, when I walked into some of the buildings, I was greeted by friendly students, hugs in some cases, and I will remember those times infinitum. I think the district has a bright future, and I think if we keep our heads facing the same direction, working together, and keeping our mindset positive, I'm sure the district will be fine moving forward. I just want to make quick mention of our department leaders present this evening and what a great experience has been to work with the cabinet and administrators here this evening and the other administrators in the district. I want to, I'd be remiss if I did not mention Michelle Planutis and Terry Ridwinski. And I hope that I can maintain the same relationship with the presidents in my new district that I've had here, because Michelle and Terry, it's been, we've had some challenging issues, but it's never been adversarial. It's always been teamwork. And finally, I do consider that this board of 9 with Tony and Bobby and myself and George, I think that's now 13, a team of 13, and it's always felt like that. So thank you very much.
I'm sad to see you leaving, Dr. Butler.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless you too.
Mr. Reba, did we vote? I don't know that we vote. No, we didn't vote yet.
Numbers 72 through 79, excluding 77. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No
No
on
on-
78.
No on 72, 3, 4, 5.
And no on 72, 73, 74, and 75.
No on 75.
So let me go through the, Mr. Bonomo.
Can we do roll call, please?
Yeah, I'm
I'm
sorry.
confused.
Mr. Bonomo,
I'm no on 78.
Mr. Chapman,
Yes, and all of them.
Mr. Fume?
Yes.
Mrs. K? 72, 73, 74, and 75?
Correct.
Mr. John?
No on
75?
75 and 78.
Mr. Mahalik?
Yes on all of them.
Mrs. Scarcella?
No on 72, 73, 74, 75, 78.
You might not have enough to leave, but
Mr. Zola?
yes and all.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes on all.
Motion passes.
Do you want to recognize anybody?
Yes, yes. Are there any newly appointed employees here tonight? Would you please stand so we can recognize your appointment?
I don't get the agenda. do I?
Anyone with guts wants to stand up there? Yeah.
Thank you.
Jared, before we conclude, I'd like to make a motion here from the floor.
Sure.
With the news of Dr. Butler's leaving us now, it's going to leave a position open, and I'd like to recommend the board approve the superintendent vacancy posting and authorize the business office to advertise for 15 days in all in all of our district schools, advertise 15 days for PSBA and PASBO, and waiving the advertising requirements in the school district policy, section 300 under employees, number 302.
Need a motion and a
I'll
second.
motion.
I'll make a motion.
He made the motion, we need a second.
I'll second it.
And then public comment, since this was not on the agenda.
Yep. The big difference is, Dr. Childs, instead of 30 days in the schools, we're gonna put a 15. I'm sure that gives everyone enough time. Instead of, in the policy, it says that we have to advertise in, let me just get the exact, all major regional newspapers for at least a month. The cost of that, to me, is just phenomenal. Advertising has gone through the roof. I don't know, I don't see the sense in spending all that money at this point, especially after just having to go through what we did with the budget. So all it's really doing is cutting down to 15 days from 30 days, and instead of going into all the major regional newspapers, we're going to do it on the PSBA website, PASBO website, and in our schools. And I think that reaches, with those two, that reaches everywhere in the state. Am I correct?
I believe we also discussed 2 days
I'm sorry,
in the standard.
we did.
In the standard speaker.
No, we
Oh, okay.
advertised,
I'm sorry. Whatever we discussed.
we said in the legal notice, 1 day a week for
Yeah.
2 weeks.
There you go.
In the legal notice of
Thank
the
you.
standard
Yep,
speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're defining PA REAP, which I did ask about that, Dr. Childs, but we didn't find any response at all through PA REAP. But I would say, again, just from my own personal experience, PSBA and PASBO has probably got the same reach, maybe even greater, and is probably even used greater. I feel confident that this is going to get attention without PA REAP, but we no longer subscribe to PA
I think
REAP.
that was like $1,000 a year subscription. And according to the business office, we weren't getting any hits from it, so it was cut then.
Some of the rationale too, in cutting from 30 to 15, a lot of candidates already know about it. I mean, it was highly publicized throughout the Lehigh Valley because that's where Dr. Butler is headed towards. I mean, people know that there's going to be an open position here in Hazleton, so we just felt from a budgetary perspective to cut that down and to cut down the advertising as well because it has gotten ridiculous.
Yes. No. No offense to our
Ken.
Ken. No offense, Ken. But you're killing us on the advertising. All right, two-edged sword, right?
Mr. Reba, roll call.
Motion
then.
second and
Yep, we got
We
it.
have that.
Forgot we.
On the new motion, do we have any public comment besides Dr. Childs?
I don't know.
All in favor of the new motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion passes.
Anything else from the board? Anything else from the public?
Yep.
Sure.
Joe.
First of all, I want to thank all of you, because I saw something I haven't seen, I've only been here for a few weeks, but I saw something tonight that I have to comment. And that is, thank you for thinking of senior citizens. Today, June 29th, 1949, today's my 68th birthday. So when you started talking, and I looked at your eyes as you were thinking about senior citizens. Thank you. And hopefully, I'm here another day, because I almost died last year. Thank God, and I'm coming to as many meetings as I can, because I'm learning here. And I think all senior citizens come and think about it, be here, and see what you said tonight. I looked in all your eyes, the comments were made. And Dr. Blood, you know I already thanked you today for being here and being my friend. And I know, little by little, I'm looking around, you are all my friends, as a senior citizen and somebody that lived here for 68 years. Thank you.
happy birthday.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Hey, we've made more than 1 year.